Namaste and welcome back to the True to Yourself podcast, a place where we explore the power of authentic living. I am your host, Ananta Ripa Ajmera, and I'm so happy to share with you today about the spiritual practice of channeling your energy into soul power. We are, as human beings, confronted with so many emotions all the time. And a really powerful aspect of the spiritual journey and the spiritual path is learning how to transmute our emotions into raw, what is known as Atma Shakti or soul power in the ancient Vedic spiritual tradition. There is a very special way that we are taught to really channel our energy into soul power, and that in Sanskrit is known as brahmacharya. Brahmacharya comes from two root Sanskrit words, Brahman, which is the universal consciousness or our soul, and charya, which means to walk or to follow. So we're learning to walk or to follow the path of our own highest self and our supreme universal consciousness, which is the same in me as it is in you, through the practice of brahmacharya. In the Bhagavad Gita, an ancient Vedic spiritual text that is essentially like the Bible of the Yoga and Ayurveda traditions that I love so much and share about, we have an incredible verse that I think really distills down what brahmacharya is and why it's so important and essential for us on our spiritual journey. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that what is like nectar in the beginning becomes like poison in the end. What is like poison in the beginning becomes like nectar in the end. This really speaks to the paradoxical nature of life on earth. The metaphor that Swami Parthasarathi, an amazing teacher and saint of the Vedic spiritual tradition, often gives of this is how you could be driving on a road that is initially full of a lot of bumps and a lot of problems and challenges, but you take it, you overcome those problems, and then after a while, your journey becomes smooth and the road leads you to your destination without any problems. On the other hand, you could end up choosing the road that looks really shiny and really smooth and easy and nectar like in the beginning, only to encounter all kinds of obstacles that end up taking you on detours off your path and not really ever allowing you to even reach your destination. This is so symbolic of why we need to have spiritual practices in our life to be able to get to where we are wanting to go, which is not actually even a destination, but simply an internal state and presence of being that will give us the ability to navigate our lives with the inner light of the true self and to become the most elevated, evolved, compassionate, and amazing versions of ourselves. So it's really valuable, I think, to have this metaphor because it shows how it may feel really awful to take on spiritual practices or disciplines in the beginning. But when we do, when we can digest that discomfort initially, then we're going to be able to really reap the benefit down the road. So it's a short term pain for a long term gain, quite a lot like exercise. In the beginning, taking on a new fitness routine really feels like poison. In the beginning, waking up early feels like poison. It's so unpleasant. We would just rather not do it. It's easier to be lazy. It's easier to just stay in bed and keep your head under the covers for as long as you want to. It feels really good temporarily, but then it can lead to health problems and challenges very soon down the road. Then, if we take on the stress and the discomfort and the pain of exercise and waking up early and doing the practices that are going to help us feel more stable and strong in our minds and bodies, we may really hate it at first, and we may really battle with it and struggle with it and want to give up on it. But then after a while, we start to enjoy the exercise and we start to feel the difference if we wake up early or if we wake up later. And we start to actually understand that this thing that was really poisonous and awful in the beginning, which we really didn't want to even do, then became the greatest gift for our peace of mind, our health, and our overall well-being. And that's really what brahmacharya is. Brahmacharya is choosing the path that may look bumpy in the beginning, that may look poisonous or feel poisonous in the beginning, and trusting that in doing so, the nectar of that pain in the short term will become the gain in the long term. And there's an incredible story actually in the Vedic spiritual tradition about this practice. And it is the story of a goddess named Brahmacharini, who is the one who practices brahmacharya, or the path of self-control. It's featured in my book, The Way of the Goddess, and I thought I would actually read it to you for some interesting inspiration. All these stories really take a lot of insight and understanding, but I feel that they're very helpful to illustrate through hyperbole, through stories and metaphors, exactly what tasks we are called to take to be able to evolve into our highest self. So here we go. The legend of Brahmacharini is a complicated one that illustrates the challenges of using traditional wisdom in a modern setting. Yet, if we can understand the story symbolically rather than literally, I believe it offers many lessons about reclaiming our power. After immolating herself, Shailaputri, who I shared about in an earlier podcast on getting grounded with the power of stability, was reborn as Brahmacharini, daughter of the spiritual king of the Himalayan mountains. She was determined to marry Lord Shiva again in her new life, so she dedicated herself to the practice of Brahmacharya, the path of self-control. For 1,000 years, she ate only fruits and flowers. For the next 100 years, she ate only vegetables. Then, for 3,000 years, she ate leaves that fell from trees. She slept on the forest floor under the vast open sky for years on end to demonstrate the discipline that empowered her to identify with her true self. By the end of the story, she even gave up eating fallen leaves. The news of such great discipline reached far and wide. Lord Brahma, father of the sage Narada, appeared before her. No one has performed brahmacharya the way you have. The only way you could have undertaken all these difficulties was due to true and pure love for Lord Shiva. May you be blessed with Lord Shiva as your husband in this birth as well. While this may sound like an extreme and even scary story, I don't see it as the tale of a goddess who gave up everything just to marry a god. Instead, I understand it as the story of a truth seeker who gave up all the many distractions in life to merge with the ultimate truth. The story of Brahmacharini and Shiva is not meant to be the story of a romantic relationship. Shiva is merely symbolic of the true self. He is pure consciousness, the eternal soul, which we strive to merge with vis-a-vis the power of spiritual practice. Gods and goddesses may be endowed with superhuman abilities like living off air, but this is only to illustrate through hyperbole the intensity of the spiritual discipline required to know your true self. That's because only when we are established in our true self can we really know and love another's true self. right? This is just the foundation, actually, of not only our physical health and well being, but also of our relationships with all beings. Because in this step of the 9-step framework of my book, The Way of the Goddess, we are actually learning about the way to harness the power in our sacral chakra, which is the reproductive area. And this is where the power of creativity lies dormant within us. The power of creativity is related to the sacral chakra, the reproductive organs, your sexuality, emotions, creative projects, and ideas. This is where the physiological element of attachment can come in. When we talk about the second chakra, it's ruled by the water element. So it's sticky, it's fluid, it seeks to connect and be cohesive and bind things together. So this is where we literally are able to combine physical fluids to create a child, but it's also the place where we can experience our emotions. We can experience also codependent threads with other people that tend to keep us stuck in cycles that are not very healthy for ourselves, because we feel, even physically and biologically, that we need someone else to be there in our life, or we need a certain substance, like perhaps ice cream, to feel better physically. So, this is the place where we're really talking about our emotions and about the water element and the sense of taste. So, if you think about the emotions in a sense that's related to physical flavors, then love is like the ultimate sweet taste. And we're all looking for that love. And incidentally, a lot of us have sugar addictions and really look for sweets to be able to feel better and to feel full and to feel, satisfied in life. And then the sour taste and the sour experiences of life can leave that sour taste on the tongue. When you remember certain things, you can feel sour about it. The salty taste is really connected with greed. Once you pop, the fun don't stop, as it has been said by the Pringles commercial. However, I think the fun stopped as soon as you popped, because once you pop, not being able to stop is not fun. It's not fun, actually, to feel that you're not in control of your own mind and your own body. And then when we talk about the pungent taste, it is fiery, it's intense, it explodes. And we know from anger and letting it go wild and raw that it can also destroy a lot of relationships. And too much of that fiery taste, even at a physiological level, according to Ayurveda, can destroy the tissues of our body and can destroy fertility. It can lead to weight loss if that's the intention and goal, but at the cost potentially of the healthy tissues of the body that can lead to the creation of new life, should that be your intention or wish. Then we have the bitter tastes, right? Which are actually considered the spiritual teacher of all the different flavors, because it's the bitter taste that actually cleanses your palate clean so that you can have a fresh start. So, in a way, brahmacharya, channeling your emotions into spiritual power, is in a sense like taking the bitter medicine of spiritual practice, which feels like poison in the beginning, and really allowing that nectar of the fresh start to really imbue your life with more purity and with more wholesomeness. In the Ayurveda and yoga psychology, there are actually 3 qualities that we experience in the entire universe, and especially in terms of our minds. These are the qualities of tamas, which is also known as inertia, rajas, which is also known as agitation, and sattva, which is known as clarity or balance of inertia and agitation. If you think about what is inertia and what is this quality of tamas in the mind, it can be compared to going to a lake on a day which is really dark and where the lake is polluted with all kinds of trash and it's muddy and sticky. And when you put your foot into the lake, you get stuck and you actually can't get out of it easily. That's the inertia heavy state of the mind, which tends to cloud our perceptions and make us believe that what is beneficial is actually like poison, and that what is like poison is actually beneficial, right? So that's where our perception gets clouded, and that's where it's really easy to fall into all kinds of addictions, whether to people who are unhealthy for us and or to substances that are ultimately self-destructive. Then we have the rajas quality of the mind, and that is quite a lot like a lake on a day which is really windy, very chaotic, has a lot going on, and is constantly in motion. It is not dirty necessarily, it's not polluted, but it's not enjoyable to go to this kind of a lake because it's so frenzied and it's so stressful to be there. And it's just that when you go there, you can lose a lot of things if you don't hold on to them carefully, because the wind and the fury and motion of that wind will easily allow things to scatter away. And you end up coming back feeling really exhausted and pretty burnt out from what was supposed to be a nice day at the lake. The sattva state of the mind, the balanced state of the mind, which is also the true state of the mind, which is a relief to know, is actually known as sattva. And the sattva state is like a lake on a clear and sunny and beautiful day where the water is so clear that you can look down and easily see your own reflection. This is our true state of mind, to be as balanced and as clear as this lake on this beautiful day where you can see your own reflection. And that's symbolic of seeing your own soul in a metaphorical sense. The soul is invisible, but having the spiritual eyes to be able to perceive that which cannot be perceived by the eyes is known through the sattva state of the mind, which is the true state of the mind. We get temporarily clouded by waves of rajas, agitation, the windy, crazy day at the lake, and by tamas, the pollution, the stickiness, the mud, the toxicity that comes into us as just being part of the modern world that we're in. And we have an opportunity through brahmacharya, through channeling our emotions, to really cultivate consciously this quality of sattva and to really be able to do things that take us out of that burnout cycle of doing, moving, like the lake on the windy day, to then being inert, being stuck, being like our foot is in the mud and we're not able to get out of it, in the tamas state, right? A lot of our lives are just vacillating back and forth from being in a state of perpetual doing, overdoing, overthinking, worrying, obsession, chase, manipulation, control, anger, frustration, etc., to then feeling hopeless, helpless, passive, stuck, weak, scared, slow, etc. What we're really looking for is how to be at peace, right? How to feel like we have the right amount of movement and we do actions and we need to move, we need to take action, but we also are able to balance it with adequate rest and deep rest and rejuvenation that actually serves our physical health, our emotional state of well-being. And when we have a healthy mind and a healthy body, it's that which actually allows us to evolve spiritually. The reason why Ayurveda and yoga even exist is to be able to give your body and mind so much health, so much clarity, so much sattva that you become an optimal vessel for spiritual growth and for spiritual enlightenment. You can't really easily get enlightened when your foot is stuck in the mud, symbolically, of your addictions, of destructive relationships. All this sucks energy out of us. So in order to reclaim our energy, to be able to reclaim our spirituality, to be able to progress on the spiritual path, we really need to consciously cultivate seeds of sattva. And the way we do that is manifold, actually. We can cultivate that balanced state of mind through the foods that we eat. We can cultivate that state of mind through the relationships that we have in our lives. We can cultivate that state of mind through our daily routine, through something as simple as the time we wake up and the time we go to bed. We can also cultivate sattva through our five senses as a very, very potent way of helping us to interact with the world around us. So, for this week, I want to actually invite you to reflect on how you are using your five senses. And I'm going to share with you a few questions from my book to be able to reflect on as you start to consider how you can transmute some of your emotions into spiritual power. Because often our emotions can be a result of the food that we eat, the television that we take in, the podcasts that we listen to, the sights that we see, the smells that we're taking in, and also even the statements we hear about other people, right? If we talk to people who gossip a lot, then this affects us emotionally, and then it can also affect us even physically. And then whether we're overusing or underusing our five senses also has an effect on our mental equilibrium. So, questions to take inventory of your power of creativity and ability to channel your energy into soul power are as follows. One, am I under or overusing my eyes? Do I have too much screen time? I think a lot of us are guilty of that in our modern life, right? Do I suppress my need to sleep and keep my eyes forcefully open for too many hours of the day? Do I absorb violent images or anything else disturbing or agitating to the mind? Pornography would also be something to consider because that will be very stimulating and agitating to the mind. Two, am I eating too little or too much? Am I eating healthy foods? Do I self-soothe with unhealthy foods? Do I avoid eating to punish myself? I was definitely an avoid eating type. And I feel that a lot of the suppression of my emotions that I had kind of been conditioned with and grown up with as a coping mechanism were so related. And I actually have a story to tell you about that, which I'll tell you as soon as I finish these questions. Three, how often am I aware of my sense of smell? When I begin noticing the scents around me, are they pleasant or unpleasant? Four, what sounds do I hear regularly? Do I have enough silence in my life? Do I use my sense of hearing to listen to gossip, arguments, and yelling? Do I hear enough sounds of nature? Five, do I receive too much or too little touch? Do I crave physical contact? Do I overindulge in physical contact, including sex? Do I hurt myself by cutting or otherwise inflicting pain on my body? So, really powerful questions to start to check in with yourself. And as I said, I had majorly avoided eating for a long time when I was growing up because it was a way to stuff everything down and to not have to deal with my emotions, to basically become numb to whatever it was I was feeling. I remember the first time I really started to do this was when I experienced two major losses in my life. I had lost my cousin to brain tumor, who I was really close to. He was an incredible spiritual role model. Even while he was going through this life threatening illness of brain tumor at such a young age, he taught me that it was important to not just consider his own pain and suffering, but until his last days, he was feeding the hungry and serving the poor. And in that process, was able to find peace within himself. His mother, my aunt, was an incredible doctor in India, where there is a lot of racial divisions and inequalities based on socioeconomic status, just as there is in all parts of the world. And she really used her gifts of healing to be able to serve rich and poor, all different castes and colors and religious background, tradition people in India, which is something very unheard of for a woman to be able to do. So she was a really powerful humanitarian role model who instilled in me the value of service. She was always joyful and smiling and happy. And the kind of joy and the kind of love that these two souls had really radiated and shared with all they encountered made me realize how important it is to live a life of service. And I remember feeling so distraught about their deaths, and also because I wasn't allowed to process them. I didn't have space to do so. As soon as my cousin had passed away, I was sent to entertain some local children who were visiting from another country. And then when my aunt had passed away, I was basically the caretaker for my sister and really needed a lot of care and a lot of comfort myself, which I never received. And it wasn't until meeting an incredible speech and drama teacher named Mrs. Sanders in my high school that I got to revisit the sorrow that I had stuffed down so far into my being. And I got to really understand it. And I had the opportunity through what she taught me to really acknowledge those feelings and to give myself the permission to grieve for these great losses. And at the same time, to be able to contemplate what it was I could do to be able to live the memory of these great souls. Mrs. Sanders, in that way, planted the seeds for channeling my raw grief and sadness into soul power by really starting to follow in the footsteps of my late cousin and my aunt. And I felt so much peace in starting to really volunteer in the local community, supporting children who had family members who were battling with cancer. It was something that I could relate to because of my own experiences, and it gave me a lot of peace to know that I could comfort children even though no one had been there to comfort me when I had gone through this loss and pain. And also giving myself that permission to really cry and to feel the pain of the loss and to grieve it properly was very important, because we can't spiritually bypass any emotions. All emotions are there to move through us. They're there to inform us. They're there to ultimately open our hearts to be able to feel our oneness with all living beings, because that's what it means to really be a true spiritual being. And what we are taught in the Vedic spiritual traditions is that we can't let go of any of our self destructive tendencies or our likes, our attractions, what we really want in life. We can't. If you love chocolate, there's no point in saying, just stop having it. It would be akin to suppression of a desire, which only serves to make the desire stronger, right? So, what we're told to do in the Vedic spiritual tradition to really channel our emotions into soul power is to take up something higher. Instead of having this attitude of giving up something lower that's bringing us down, we are taught and asked to take up something higher, really elevate ourselves with an ideal that is there to benefit not only ourselves and our own family members and those close to us or around us, but as many beings as possible, not even just human beings, but living beings, animals, plants, the world around us. We believe that as a soul, at a soul level, at a spiritual level, we are all one. So we are the same as the soul in the dog and the cat and the mouse and the rat. And this doesn't mean that we have to adopt all of these creatures into our homes. Maybe we already have had the experience of living with some of them, and I can speak from experience through living in New York, where we had all kinds of interesting, creepy crawly visitors. But when we're really established in this consciousness, we learn to also see them as an embodiment of the same soul within us, and it helps in dealing with such creatures. But when we really see that, then we seek to really uplift all beings. And when we seek to uplift all beings, our own sense of disconnect, of separation, of loss, of sorrow starts to alleviate, it starts to lessen. And we start to feel a lot more at peace because our true self is one with all that is. And if we are a part of every living being that has ever existed, then how can we be without that being? They are a part of us. And when we cultivate and nourish those seeds of spirituality by taking up a higher ideal of service, we are really able to say yes to our own true nature and to feel that blossoming unfold in our lives right before our very eyes. And my life really changed from being this sad, emotion suppressing, anorexic student into someone who knew that I have the power to be able to feel what I need to feel to heal, and also to extend my love to care for all those who are without it. It really changed my life, and it gave me not only peace, but a sense of empowerment and a sense of agency, even in a situation where I felt that many things were out of my own control. And it's difficult to do in the beginning, to pull ourselves out of our own issues enough to think about other people. But I always think of my cousin whenever I am confronted with my own issues, that we can't just stay stuck on our own problems. When we start to alleviate the suffering of others, our own suffering automatically alleviates. And that's why it is so powerful to have a service based intention. And for me, I had to create a couple of them: that my body is my temple, and also that I may be of service to the liberation of all living beings. So now, even as I had experienced the loss very recently of Mrs. Sanders, who taught me these beautiful lessons, I found a lot of comfort in just allowing the tears to flow without trying to hold them back or put on a strong mask to be able to conceal my pain. I just allowed the tears. I still allow the tears as and when they wish to come. And I tell myself, I am here for you. And it's okay to feel. It is healthy, and it will help you to experience this, to not hold on to this, but to remember always the love that she gave and the great wisdom and lessons that she shared, and to be able to share them freely and fully with others as a way to pay forward her legacy. And I feel that I am so on that track now already, and it just gives me the inspiration and encouragement every time I think of her to just keep going through whatever challenges I keep on facing on my path of service, because there is nectar to be had of the pure love that emerges from discipline, from constantly channeling our own grief and our own pain and our own sorrow into something beautiful, into something that can uplift and serve and heal other people. But to always do so from a space of offering that to ourselves, right? So it's ironic, this story that I shared about the goddess who gave up even fallen leaves, because it sounds like anorexia in a sense, but it's symbolic. And for me, it's something very interesting, because the idea of just even eating healthy food actually felt that poisonous to me. It felt that odd to me, that difficult to me, as it would be to even go without anything, as in her story. So it's all about the metaphorical sense of what is difficult for you, what is like poison for you, right? Because it was so foreign to think that I could even be friends with food. But when I really started to see my body as a temple for that divine consciousness that's dwelling within me and that's dwelling within all, I knew it was important to honor this vessel, this physical body, by doing whatever it was going to take and eating the foods that were actually going to nourish me on my spiritual path. And it was hard in the beginning. It was as hard as what is described in that story. But it was so worth it to just throw away all the agitating chips and all the pretzels and cookies and all these things I used to like, right? The temporary nectar, if you will, and replacing them with ghee, with rice, with mung lentils, with fresh vegetables, with the irritating act of cooking every day and actually, you know, creating my own meals every time instead of just ordering something or picking up something that was convenient. It was a real pain to do this, but only when I really connected with that intention of, oh, my body is my temple, could I really start to make those changes and to even break up with foods that were no longer serving me. I had a whole breakup with frozen yogurt and fruits because they are considered an incompatible food combination according to Ayurveda, and they're also cold. So when we eat foods that are warm and cooked, it has a really healing impact upon our body, our physical digestion. And when we digest our food properly, it helps us digest our emotions properly too. I'll share more about this in the third step of the framework, and you can see how they're all connected. But when you have warm cooked foods, it's really, really good for your digestion. So I had to say bye bye forever to frozen yogurt. And I had it one last time just to have that parting. But I could do it because I was going for something higher. I was going for caring for my body as this sacred vessel. And I apply the same even now to my exercise routines. I've recently started taking Taekwondo training, and I'm very careful about how I feel and really honoring my limitations and accepting where I'm at. And I find that that helps me actually go beyond what I thought were my limitations by simply just checking in with myself. And if I'm feeling any discomfort or when I'm having my menstrual cycle, for example, I don't exercise because it doesn't feel comfortable to do so. And when I honor my body, I find that when I come back to it, I actually am able to feel comfortable doing even more than what I did before. And it's really amazing to be in a class with mostly teenagers learning this incredible system that I know would have been so much harder for me had I not cultivated so much sattva in my mind and also really honored my body as the temple for my indwelling spirit. So I really encourage you to reflect on how you are engaging with each of your five senses and to reflect also on an intention that you can set that really will connect you with something higher within yourself and within your life to really motivate you to do what it takes to grow in your wellness and to evolve on your spiritual journey. And I'll share with you in the next episode about practices that you can do to really channel your emotions and your energy into soul power so that you can take your intention that you set for yourself this week and put it into practice next week through some concrete ways that I will share with you. And if you really enjoyed this episode of the True to Yourself podcast, I would really encourage you to check out our new Circle of Life community program. We have a 14-day free trial for this program, which includes a member library full of incredible recordings of step-by-step processes for cultivating all of the 9 spiritual superpowers I share about in my framework, as well as offering you spiritual wellness masterclasses in Ayurveda, how to take care of yourself in all the seasons according to Ayurveda, as well as embodiment tutorials that will empower you with different kinds of movement modalities like Qigong, yoga, ODC, classical Indian dance, which is something I'm learning myself. My teacher has contributed some tutorials in our library. We also have lots of incredible Ayurvedic recipes in the library that will support you to channel your emotions into soul power. We have chakra healing, guided visualizations to be able to really put this all into practice, as well as recordings of our power of practice circles. We recently did a circle on this very practice of channeling your emotions into spiritual power. It was an incredible circle that you can listen to and learn from the collective wisdom of not just myself, but our members in the program as well. We connect you to spiritual mentors who I've personally trained to support you on your journey, as well as have 4 subgroups within the community for parents, for healers and teachers, corporate professionals, and for seniors to be able to connect and give each other more support on your respective journeys. We also have a community buddy system to help make this process of converting poison into nectar more enjoyable through fun and friendship, and so much more. We'll be adding a lot of writing support for anyone who wants to become an author and or simply to use writing as a path to channel your emotions into spirituality. We have a lot of conscious business development resources in our library that we will be continuously adding to as well. So there's so many reasons to check it out and join and be a part of something bigger than yourself, even as you reflect on this intention to anchor yourself in something higher that will inspire you to continue to grow and evolve spiritually. So this is Ananta Ripa Ajmera. Thank you so much for joining me on this issue or episode of the True to Yourself podcast, a place where we explore the power of authentic living. See you next time.